Hi everyone, my name's Karen. May 13th of 2022, my husband and I took a 7-day cruise out of Seward, Alaska down to Vancouver, British Columbia on the Radiance of the Seas, Royal Caribbean cruise ship. And this video is a review of that experience and the ship itself. The ship is a member of the Radiance class. It's the headlining member along with Brilliance and Jewel, I believe, and Serenade of the Seas. They're a little bit smaller than the newer Royal Caribbean ships that can hold 6,500 people. Don't expect to be able to surf off the back of the ship or zip line at the top of the ship. That said, the Radiance is a beautiful ship. It holds 2,500 passengers. On our particular cruise, because we're still coming out of COVID, and like most people, this was our first vacation together in over 2 years. And we had to be vaccinated and show proof of a negative COVID test. So hopefully by the time you watch this video, that will no longer be the case. But everybody that was on board was either vaccinated or had shown a negative test from the day before cruising, which, you know, is a relief for most passengers. You don't want to have to worry about that stuff on a vacation. And we only had 1,400 odd passengers on board, so about 60% capacity. And for that reason, never had to wait for anything. Most of the venues weren't completely full, but there's something nice about not being in giant crowds when you're on vacation. The size of the ship, it's still, you know, over 900 feet long. 13 decks, I believe. Let's talk about the outdoors of the ship. Up on decks 11 and 12. There's a lot to do. Unfortunately, you know, we went in May, and most of the days of our cruise, it was 40, 45 degrees out. And so there wasn't an opportunity to do things like rock climbing or basketball or volleyball, pickleball. All those things were scheduled, and I'm sure they happened. They probably just didn't have a whole lot of guests engaged. One thing that we did do, we did try the miniature golf and found that the mini golf course, it's good. It's a 9-hole course. And, but you want to do it while you're in port, if at all possible, or at least in very calm seas. When we did it, the balls were rolling around like crazy. Just adds a little more challenge to the game though, right? We did have some time to play a little bit of shuffleboard. One of the cool things about the Royal ships is that you can go out on the helipad down on deck 5. And we made our way down there a couple of times. One time so that I could do the I'm the king of the world thing off the front of the ship. My husband also went down there and realized, you know, the helipad is on TV. It's on closed circuit channel 24 on your TV in the cabin, and so he decided he would go and entertain the guests and do jumping jacks and so forth. Very hard to see him though. He looked like a little ant bouncing up and down. And when we stopped at Hubbard Glacier, we got out on the front of the ship, and it was a beautiful view from the helipad. And the ship did a couple of 360s while we were there, and we were able to go back to our cabin and also have a really good view of the glacier. Now, that said, Radiance of the Seas is not an icebreaker ship, right? So it's going to get as close as it can to some of these landmarks on the Alaska itinerary, but you may not be able to get as close as you might like to during the months of the year where there's going to be more icebergs and ice flows and so forth in the water. And that's I believe that's May and September. There's going to be a little more ice floating in the water. That was what we were told. And as a result, you know, sometimes the cruise ships get smaller ships to go out in front of them and clear some of that ice away, you know, icebreaker hulls. That didn't happen this time. So we were only able to get within a few miles of Hubbard Glacier. So I imagine, you know, some passengers were probably disappointed with that. It was our first visit. So yeah, from my opinion, it was still just an amazing, majestic sight. Some other things about the deck: there is a jogging track. There are a couple of places that are only accessible if you go outside and go out onto the deck. And for me, in one case, that kind of was a negative in my book, right? We have reservations one night at Samba, which is the Brazilian steakhouse, and find that it's out on the 12th floor, and that we're all dressed up, right? It's one of the dressy evenings, and we had to go out in 30-degree weather and 20-mile-an-hour winds with the ship moving, and make our way out to the restaurant that way. So a little frustrating, but you come to expect that with being on a cruise ship for a week. The other place that's out on the 12th floor from outside is the video arcade, which is open 24 hours. And we did go visit there a couple of times. We bought some credits ahead of time to use in there. I don't really recommend that because you don't save any money doing it. And so if you end up not using all your credits, then you're out whatever difference you paid for ahead of time. So if you go to the video arcade, just use your sail and sign card as you go along. Let's talk about some of the other entertainment options on board Radiance of the Seas. There's actually a really nice cinema just behind the Aurora Theater on the 6th floor of the ship. I was really kind of surprised. I saw that they had a cinema in the daily things to do listing and went over and expected a little room with a few rows of seats. It's a stadium seating type theater that takes up 2 floors of the ship. The only issue I have is that the screen is literally right above the exit sign on the left side of the theater, which is lit up. And so the bottom left-hand corner of the screen is kind of affected by that. And the movie is a little brighter. The brightness is a little distracting down in the bottom left corner. But I saw The Lost City and got there 15 minutes before the show, and it was full. I got a seat on the end in the second row, and it was completely full by the time the feature started. Really kind of surprising. I enjoyed the cinema quite a bit. Down next to the cinema, there is an English type pub with a dartboard in the back and really kind of inviting little atmosphere. They had a fantastic guitarist named Vince that played multiple nights in the pub and just rocked the place, sold it out. Wasn't an empty seat in there. Really nice. They also, on Radiance, they have 2 billiard tables. So I'm not used to seeing pool tables on board a cruise ship, but apparently there is new space age technology that allows using gimbals on the table to allow it to stay stationary regardless of the motion of the ocean. Very cool. There's also a schooner bar behind the area where the pool tables are. And that's where a lot of the trivia games, the name that tune kind of contests were. Throughout the week, we tried a few of those. Just wasn't our week as far as trying to compete for Disney trivia or 80s trivia or classic rock name that tune. We did fairly well, but there were some real aficionados on board this ship. So have to wait for next time to get our free keychain. The schooner bar is also home to the piano bar. And we walked through the ship a couple of times at night and just hear some fantastic tunes coming from there. A lot of people just like to lounge there, watch the ocean, listen to the music, have a drink, and just relax. And it was a great area for that. Also on the 6th floor is the casino. And we did spend a little bit of time in the casino. It's a decent sized casino for the ship. It opened, I believe, once we were out a couple of miles off the shore. If you're gonna do the casino, you should probably plan on bringing your own cash. There are fees for using your sail and sign card to get cash, just as you'd expect from an ATM. So I think a lot of people kind of naively expect that they're just going to go and stick their sail and sign card into a slot machine, and it's going to give them X amount of money to spend. No, if you're going to go to the ship to gamble, bring cash with you. The Radiance has a limited number of shops on board. I believe they're on the 5th floor. And it's what you'd expect in a smaller cruise ship, right? There's a gift shop. There's an area where you can purchase alcohol and cigarettes. There is a jewelry shop. And really that's about it. You know, some of the bigger ships, you get the everything is $10 store and the candy store and so forth. You know, Radiance to some extent is a no frills cruise ship, in that you're going to get the basics in the shops, and that was fine with us. There was a couple of really nice galleries where we could go look at artist work. They had Salvador Dali's work on board. They had Peter Max. They had his work on board, and each night for 3 or 4 nights they highlighted a different artist and had art auctions and so forth on board. So on this ship we had unlimited dining. So again, with the Radiance class ships, you're not going to get as many dining options as you do with, say, an Ovation of the Seas, the much bigger ships. There are 4 restaurants on the Radiance of the Seas that participate in the dining plan, and those include Giovanni's Italian restaurant, the Samba Grill, which is the Brazilian steakhouse, Chops, which is the steakhouse, and the Izumi, which is a sushi restaurant with teriyaki and other options, udon and so forth, ramen. And we visited all 4 restaurants. Interestingly, when you purchase the unlimited dining plan, you also have the option of getting 50% off on the chef's table option, which is not included with the package otherwise. So chef's table allows you to go have a 5-course meal with the, I believe it's with the captain, and everything is prepared specifically for you. There's wine pairing that comes with each course. You know, we're not wine drinkers, and we were happy with iced tea and lemonade throughout the trip for the most part. But so we declined to do the chef's table. My palate just isn't the most sensitive, and didn't see the point in spending an extra $100 when we'd already purchased the unlimited plan, which incidentally for us I believe was $184 a person for a 7-day cruise. So if you're going to purchase that, you want to make sure that you get your money's worth. And I don't know that I would recommend it. Again, it really, it's going to depend from person to person or family to family, what you really like. And, you know, if you really enjoy some of these restaurants, you're going to go back for every meal. Some of them are open for lunch on the 2 sea days during the trip, as well as embarkation day. So we took advantage of that and went to Chops an extra time on embarkation day. And, you know, of the 4 restaurants, I will say that Chops was fantastic on the Radiance. I had read mixed reviews from other cruisers, other cruise lines. I understand there's a Chops grill on pretty much every Royal Caribbean ship. But our experience was fantastic. The only weird thing we noticed was that some of the windows on both sides of the ship, and including inside Chops Grill, were all spidered with glass, as if, you know, they had been broken. Something hit them from the outside, and so the ship was scheduled to be in for maintenance. But so we always asked to sit next to a window that had not been that had not been shattered. But putting that aside, the food, oh my gosh, the food, Edwin, Linda, Omar, the staff at Chops Grill were fantastic. They treated us like family the whole time we were there. We saw them at other times during the cruise, and they recognized us and by name and said hello. So really cool to see. The other restaurants, Giovanni's was good. It was, you know, it was nothing special. It was good Italian food. They also have steak and seafood options there as well. Nothing really screamed at us, you know, this is worth paying $80 for on its own. If you're an Italian food lover, you'll probably enjoy going to Giovanni's. You know, the options down in the Windjammer Cafe, and I'm going to talk about Windjammer in a little bit, are kind of limited when it comes to Italian food, and you may find yourself waiting in long lines to be served there. The Izumi restaurant was also very good. We went there twice. And I think I tried the ramen one time and the udon. With the unlimited plan. You can choose one appetizer. You can choose two entrees. So basically, you get we got like an udon and a tray of 8 California rolls or something like, or dragon rolls and ramen, and split those between the two of us. So we got to try 4 different things. The appetizers were good as well. No complaints about Izumi. It's the only place that we went that was fairly crowded each time that we went. In fact, one time we got the last table with a view of the water, which was really nice. But on a cruise where we really didn't have to wait very long for anything, that was an area that was always very, very busy. So kudos to Izumi. We enjoyed the service there as well. The last restaurant, Samba, I think we kind of missed out on a great experience because they really kind of go out of their way to give you a lot of food and a lot of different options, right? Probably the 2 mistakes that we made with Samba, we made an 8 o'clock reservation. The restaurant's open till 9 o'clock, so we figured, we'll get all our stuff done. We'll go eat at 8 o'clock. It'll be fine. Well, the ship's already moving at 8. It's pitch dark. Like I said, it's cold out. It's windy. So we had to enter Samba from the outside. So we come in, we're all disheveled and so forth. And they were really good. They sat us right away. And they do offer soup. It's basically make your own chicken soup with rice and corn and chicken and spices all a la carte. And you add it all to the broth yourself. So it's kind of interesting. Salad and so forth as well. And they bring you to your table, they bring you potatoes just as part of the main service. So a couple of issues that we had with Samba. The first is kind of out of their control, and that was that it's in the back of the ship. And being in that location, it was quite a ride the night that we were on the ship. And I don't have any problem with the motion of the ocean. My husband's looking out the window and watching the sea line go up and down while he's trying to eat. And it just didn't work for him. He lost his appetite about 2 courses in. That the motion really hit us. So, I imagine most of the time that's not a huge issue, but this time it was. And so I recommend if you have a hard time with seasickness or any kind of internal balance issues, save Samba for when the ship is in port, if you can. The other issue that we had from arriving late was that, usually when I go to Brazilian steakhouses, they're serving a lot of people, right? So they bring you a skewer that's got 12, 15, 20 servings on it. Well, since, there was only a few people there, they didn't want to waste food. And, you can't really fault them for that. But they would bring us a skewer with 2 pieces of meat on it. And so it was basically, okay, I guess dinner is going to be a sampling affair. So if you wanted to try more than 1 piece of lamb or filet mignon, you'd have to wait for the next time the server brought it out, which we didn't know if there'd be a next time given the time of day that we were there. So my husband had a bit of an issue with that. I like the variety, so I kind of waited for one skewer after another, and finally, I had gotten completely full, and I still wanted to experience the dessert, and so I missed a couple of skewers, a couple of courses to do that. So we skipped right to the dessert, which is the grilled pineapple with cinnamon, and I believe it's either nutmeg or paprika. Really good. They'll let you take as much as you want of the pineapple, and nice way to finish the evening. If you like Brazilian steakhouses, find one that has pineapple for dessert. So, overall, we visited 6 places for dinner and I think 3 places for lunch. The other night of the cruise, we tried the main dining room down on the 5th floor with the My Time dining because they had a lobster special that evening. And I found it adequate. It was good. Um, it was nice to try out a different dining option on board the ship. And, I think if we had gone with, say, a 3-night um, dinner package, which was, I think, about $84 a person, we might have been a little bit better off, and not feeling like we were obligated to go to the specialty restaurants. There were a couple of nights where the menu on the main restaurant looked fine. The night that we were there, they had baked Alaska for dessert, and they had Cherries Jubilee, which those two are 1 and 2 in any order on my list of favorite dessert items on board cruise ships. And it was a good experience. This is really a choice that is up to you. I think on Radiance of the Seas, if we had the opportunity to do it again, we'd probably go with the 3-night plan versus the unlimited. There are some nice perks to the unlimited plan, and it seems to be easier to get tables and things like that. It does include lunches and so forth, but again, unless you want to be vigilant about making sure you get your money's worth, you may be better off with the main dining room and trying out 3 of the 4 specialty restaurants. So I want to talk about some of the other restaurants on board the ship, right? So there are a number of quick service options aboard any cruise ship, and Radiance is no exception, but again, it's a smaller ship, so your number of options is a little more limited. Of course, they do have room service. I come from an era where room service was free, and now there's a charge for it, but it is available 24 hours. You can also get, a lot of people get breakfast delivered to their room in the morning, and they do give you a card to fill out. You leave it in your room on the doorknob by 3 a.m. and breakfast will be, delivered whatever time you specify. They had a hot dog stand on board the ship up on the 11th floor, just outside of the Windjammer Cafe, which, for one thing, it's kind of open to the air. So going out there meant you were going to be, out in the elements and so forth. And so the hot dog stand a lot of the time was shut down when the schedule said it would be up and operating. But when it did operate, I was a little disappointed. I stopped there once and was looking, maybe I'll get a chili dog for my husband and see if they have Polish sausage or anything like that. It was basically 2 different kinds of hot dogs and then sauerkraut, onions, and the typical hot dog toppings. So if you're expecting a gourmet experience or something out of the ordinary with the hot dogs, you're going to be disappointed. It's a good place to get a hot dog. The Windjammer Cafe. So Windjammer is a place you can go for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I would have expected Windjammer to be open a little bit later in the evening. I'm not used to a cruise ship where there's literally no dining options after a certain point. And that may have to do with COVID and so forth. But obviously there are some of the more budget cruise lines offer things like 24-hour pizza, 24-hour ice cream. Not available on Radiance of the Seas. You'd have to do room service if you're going to do that. Windjammer is open till 8:30 at night each day of our cruise. And I had a number of different serving stations, 2 main serving stations in the middle, desserts in the back, ice cream in the very back. Something I found really interesting was that the ice cream machine, not only did they not allow you to serve yourself, and I'm guessing this is because of COVID, they had someone standing there asking you whether you wanted chocolate, vanilla, or swirl. They also took it away after the lunch and dinner hours were over. So it wasn't available to go and serve yourself like you might see on a Carnival cruise ship. But again, those rules might be all out the window now with COVID precautions and so forth. Some things about the Windjammer: you can get omelets, you can get over easy eggs and so forth from one of their serving stations. They'll give you a number, and you can, on a little laminate block of crystal, and you can go off and get your other stuff, and they'll call your number when it's ready. I had a decent ham and cheese omelet one day, and I got over medium eggs a couple of times. They also offer a bar with French toast and Belgian waffles and pancakes. So they're definitely there to serve your sweet tooth at the breakfast counter. And definitely all types of fruit. I got to try figs for breakfast at one time. Those were actually really good. A lot of different fruit options. And also some things like bagels with salmon and lox, right? And cold cuts and so forth for European, Middle Eastern appetites and so forth. They do try to cater to a lot of different cultures. Lunch and dinner time, they offer a cutting board with turkey or ham or whatever, roast beef. The only area I had a problem with Windjammer really was with their Italian food counter. So they, unfortunately, is one of those areas where they're understaffed, right? I believe that Royal's still working on getting back their full complement of workers and so forth. So unfortunately, they had one person working the entire area with the Italian food. So they basically had 3 pots to keep track of that were on burners. Then they had three trays of food that people could grab from that were rapidly, almost always empty, right? So it was hard for this person to continuously take orders, try to fill them, and keep the other trays full at the same time. So I give him that. It didn't work for me. 2 other places I want to mention for food on board Royal, Radiance of the Seas. The first being the Latitudes Cafe, which is up on deck 5, I want to say. And you can purchase all manner of specialty coffees there, but not chai tea, no vanilla chai tea for Karen. So my husband Chris had a great time. He got the unlimited or 15 coffee drinks plan for the trip, and that worked out really well for him with Latitudes. I got my tea from Windjammer for the most part, or Park Cafe, and they did have little chai tea bag envelopes, so yeah, not a total loss. Latitudes also is typically open till about 8 or 9 o'clock at night and offers desserts. So a lot of the same desserts that you see in Windjammer, if it's closed, go to Latitudes. They have a lot of those, and you can just request them. Tried a number of different mousses, gelatin desserts, pies and cakes and so forth. Had really good carrot cake one evening. A lot of parfaits. The ship seems to be big on parfaits, probably because they look so nice. So we did get a chance to try a lot of parfaits. Also, the Park Cafe. So Park Cafe ends up being your go-to cafe if you're a night owl. Park Cafe was typically open until 11 o'clock at night, and it's there when everything else is closed. And so in the daytime, you can get cute little sandwiches, roast. They have a cutting board there, and they'll cut roast beef for you and make you a little sandwich with horseradish or whatever. There's another area where you can get a salad, and they also offer some of the dessert items there. At night, they have a pizza bar there, so we would compete with teenagers and others and just come by and say, yeah, can I get 4 slices of cheese and 2 pepperonis? And we'd say, you better get in line. There's going to be nothing left of the pizza by the time you get up there. Nice thing about Park Cafe, they also offer coffee, tea, lemonade, and iced tea, which are free on the ship. Don't need any kind of a drink plan to get those. And in the mornings, you can get orange juice and apple juice, and sometimes like kiwi strawberry juice, if I remember right. But back to Park Cafe. Park is situated in the Solarium, which is up on the 11th floor, closer to the front of the ship. The Solarium I want to talk about because it was fantastic. It was warm. They keep it about 80 degrees, and the pool is heated. In fact, the pool was so hot on the first day they had to drain it and refill it because it was around 94 degrees. It was like sitting in the jacuzzi. When we went in, it was about 86 degrees, so still quite nice. And they have a lifeguard. They have a hot tub there also. So we waited for one couple to finish with the hot tub. We went up there and we met another nice couple there and talked for quite a while. But the Solarium was a nice break from the cold for sure. We spent so much time in 40 degree, 45 degree weather in the month of May that getting into a nice little 80 degree area that feels like outdoors was fantastic. Another nice thing about the Solarium is that it's just for adults, right? There are times of day when kids are allowed, and it specifies in your planner for each day. They'll say 8 to 10 a.m. kids time in the Solarium. And the rest of the day, it is adults only. So there's nobody running around and causing racket and so forth. I'm getting old. So we were able to really kind of enjoy ourselves. There weren't a lot of people on board the ship, so you can lay out on the chairs there and so forth, use the pool, use the jacuzzi, eat at the park cafe, bring something back to your chair. Fantastic. Loved it. There's a bar up there as well. There's also an outdoor pool area. And there were some brave souls during the trip that did jump in the pool, the polar bears, I guess. They also have 2 hot tubs out there. So there were some people, younger people in general, that tried out the hot tubs. And there were not a lot of young people on this trip to begin with. Alaska is not typically a hotbed for families with young kids, but or teenagers, but there were some. The outdoor area is nice, and you can tell they put a lot of work into it. There's a water slide, rock climbing wall, and that was open a couple of times during the cruise, but there were a lot of notices about, hey, this is subject to weather, this is subject to the wind or the temperature, we may not be able to offer these activities, and a lot of the times that was the case. There's an outdoor bar and a cinema, so there was a big old TV screen outdoors on the 11th floor, and people would sit at the bar and then turn their bar stools around and watch a movie on the big screen. I think Spider-Man No Way Home was playing this week. So there was that option available to them. You know, some of the things that you're used to, if you're a repeat cruiser, there are certain experiences that you're very used to on cruise ships that didn't happen this time, because I think, you know, it's a combination of 2 things, right? There's not as many passengers as usual, and there are not as many crew members. They're still in the process of getting a lot of their crew back, and I think some of that has to do with their crew is from all over the world, right? So there's various passport and visa issues and COVID restrictions and so forth that you have to deal with before you can get everybody back on the ship again. So I imagine it was a reduced crew, and so then we didn't get things like, you know, the crew singing to us in the main dining hall, or classes on towel folding. In fact, we got two towel animals in our room the whole week. We didn't get a big Broadway style show in the main theater every night. There was one on the final night of the cruise, and unfortunately we spent a lot of that evening doing our COVID tests and preparation to be able to, you know, get into Canada and get on our airplane the next day. So unfortunately, we missed that show, which was focused on, I believe, Rio's a South American style show with tango and so forth with the captain. So my apologies for not providing a review on that. The ship did have a really good juggler who told some cool stories while he did his act, and they also had a comedian that came on board a couple of times during the cruise and performed 2 shows per night. One that I was looking forward to that we didn't get an opportunity to do was the backstage tour, right? To go see the kitchens, go see the bridge, see the engineering room, see what happens with waste and so forth. Most ships offer that tour on a sea day, and we were told that because of the issues with COVID, that will probably come back in the July time frame. So, you know, you have to be understanding of those kinds of things. And I think, you know, the benefits of having a smaller ship and less passengers and so forth kind of outweighed the things that we didn't get to do on this ship because of those capacity issues. Some of the bingo games were canceled. If you've played bingo before, it's one of the most frustrating, aggravating experiences you can undertake. Something I was looking forward to, karaoke. They offered that the first and second nights of the cruise, and then the final night. And when we stopped by on the final night, there was just a small little room. I'm used to, you know, high energy karaoke rooms and so forth on these ships, and that's coming back, and I'm sure it's there and thriving on the bigger cruise ships and so forth. Let me tell you, this is a lot like when you cruise Alaska, it's a lot like cruising Hawaii. We've cruised Hawaii on Norwegian, on Pride of America, and it's a ship that serves a purpose, right? It takes you around the islands. It would be overly expensive to try to fly from Oahu to Maui to Kauai to Molokai and so forth. And the ship takes care of all that for you. Here, you're on the ship to see the scenery, right? The glaciers, oh my gosh, the waterfalls. And during May and September, the waterfalls are partially frozen. So sometimes we'd go by waterfalls that would be ice up here and then flowing here and then back to ice again and then back to flowing again. Really interesting stuff. The photography. So we purchased a package where we get 20 photographs of any size, and this ship, they were all 8x10s. So we got 20 8x10s for, I believe, $100 or $120, which is really good. You know, if you sailed on cruise ships in the 90s and the aughts, you paid through the nose for photographs. And so we just decided, you know, we'll do it. We'll take a bunch of pictures, and surely we'll get 20 photos that we like out of all these pictures that we take. We got there. We had to pose a lot, but we got there. But we enjoyed it. It was an opportunity. I like to dress up. My husband does not, but he loves me. And so he cleans up really nice too. And we had an opportunity to pose for, I don't know, 8 or 9 photographers. There's 2 fancy nights on board a 7-day cruise on Royal, and they took the opportunity to set up a whole bunch of photography stations for that, as well as all embarkation or debarkation points. And then there are some just photo moments that are available on board the ship. Like when we went to Hubbard Glacier, they had a woman who was, at first I thought she was dressed as a Canadian Royal mounted soldier, but she actually is one. She gave a talk later in the week about women in that organization and what it's like to work with the Mounties. She was out there on the helipad for people to take pictures with. If you're only planning on having a good time on the trip and you're not concerned with photos, don't buy packages ahead of time. You can buy single photos in the $20 range, maybe less. But packages, if you're looking to save money and put together like a scrapbook or a photo book. I'll talk a little bit about the salon on board the Radiance of the Seas. Now, I've cruised many times before. Again, this is only my 2nd time on Royal, but I'm used to getting specials sent to my cabin during the week to say, you know, we're on a sea day. You can get couples massages, 2 for 1. Didn't happen. I just was surprised that we didn't see a lot of discounts or a lot of special rates on the last day of the cruise. So what we were hoping would be a couples massage turned into just a singles massage. For me, I did the hot stone massage. It was good. I did a 70-minute massage, and you know, there was upselling, and you just have to kind of say, hey, you know, you're a great salesperson. I really appreciate what you're doing, but I really just need the massage. And it actually went really well. Of course, I woke up, you know, in pain in my shoulders the next day. So I don't know if they tightened up or whatever, but feel a little better now than a few weeks ago. You know, when you do an Alaska cruise, especially one that starts up in Seward as opposed to like a Vancouver or Seattle round trip, if you're doing one that goes up to South Central Alaska, you're really, the scenery is the number one thing, right? So for us, we're going south, or southeast. We're going from Seward to Vancouver. So we chose a stateroom on the port side of the ship. Now, let me tell you, a lot of the time when you're in that inside passage and so forth, there's plenty to see on both sides of the ship. But the starboard side, a lot of the time there was just water to look at. And so those staterooms tended to take a lot longer to fill than the port side staterooms. If you're looking for a bargain and you still want a balcony stateroom, you may be able to get a really good deal on one of the remaining starboard side rooms. One thing I will say with this cruise was that we booked it a good 6 months in advance. And what you should always do is go back and review the price of your cruise. Go to Expedia, go to Royal's site, and review to make sure that if the price goes down, that you're covered, right? That you can call the cruise line and say, hey, I'm still within the window to cancel my cruise. And I noticed that the price for the room right next door to mine has decreased $500 less than what I paid. And they will hook you up. Our cruise actually dropped more than $500 in price when we realized that had happened, and we called Royal, and they were willing to work with us and drop the amount that we owed on the cruise by a substantial margin. Some things that I can't really speak to on Radiance of the Seas. My kids are all grown up, and so we were there by ourselves. And so I can't speak to any of the kids club opportunities on board the ships. We also went through the exercise room on the first night, and I work out twice a week. I have a exercise room in our house and a pool out back, but we're on vacation, and it was hard to get up the motivation to go up to the 12th floor and go to the exercise facility. It's big, I'll give it that. There is plenty of machines and so forth to keep you busy. They had, I think, one or two trainers in there when I was in there. So the facilities look great views of the ocean and so forth up on top of the ship. I just didn't get up the nerve to go back and try it. Too busy with the unlimited dining, I suppose. And of course, you're cruising Alaska, so there are opportunities to see wildlife along the way. And when we first embarked on the ship, there was a little otter down in the water by the gangway, playing with, lying on his back in the water and trying to break open a shell with a rock. So cute. Tried to take a bunch of pictures of that, and of course it looks like two little lumps in the water, but such a cute little guy. We saw a number of humpback whales, both from the ship and during our excursions. We never saw any orcas. Again, this is mid-May. We also saw some dolphins and a couple of sea lions as we got closer to the shoreline. Okay, now we're going to talk about the cabins on board the ship. So I talked about wanting to be aware of where your cruise is going and the geography involved, right? So if you're going from south to north, say you're cruising back from Vancouver to Seward, you might want to get a stateroom on the starboard or right side of the ship if you are there to see the scenery like 99% of the other passengers on board. So we got a balcony stateroom, which I kind of believe is a must for Alaska, unless you've gone many times and can live with an ocean view. So going into our cabin, it was about 180 to 200 square feet, pretty standard for a balcony cabin. We did have a couch that was a little smaller than what I'm used to with some of the other cruise lines, where it pulls out into a double bed. I think this one just pulled out into a single. We had nightstands with a phone area and so forth. One thing that I will say is that, this day and age, you need more outlets in the rooms. We had 2 outlets in the room, and they were across from the bed. So we made sure we brought really long USB-C cords for our phones. We have a CPAP machine, and so that needs to be plugged in as well. So I let our stateroom attendant, Hamilton, know that we had special medical need. And he was fantastic. He brought us a gallon of distilled water, which is necessary for the CPAP, as well as an extension cord that allowed us to connect, our cord to the plug across the room. This is a 20-year-old ship, and upgrading the electrical in each room, that's a tall order, right? That's going under ship refurbishment. Newer ships, you may have an outlet right next to the bed. Ask your room steward to provide an extension cord, because the one that you're using may not be appropriate or may overload the circuit. So be sure that you're not plugging something in that you shouldn't. You can plug a hairdryer into the outlet in the main room, not the one in the bathroom. The bathroom has a outlet hanging from the ceiling that is meant for electric razors. You can also use it to charge your phone, which we did it at times. But be aware that you're only going to have those 3 in the room, and they are set up to accept either the US or the European AC adapters. We had a nice little balcony, no folding chairs. We just had 2 sitting chairs and a little circular table, but just fantastic views. Make sure that you don't, I don't recommend doing the, we'll get you a balcony, not going to tell you where it is yet, because, you run the chance of getting an obstructed view cabin and looking at a lifeboat instead of the fantastic Alaska scenery on cruises like this. So that's also the reason that we didn't look at things like the upgrades that Royal offers. They sent us a lot of email about, for just $200, or tell us how much more you'd be willing to pay to upgrade to a junior suite. By the way, this could be anywhere on the ship, and it might be obstructed view. So be careful with that. It could be on the starboard side of the ship, and we wanted to be on the port side. So when you're not given a lot of choice, and they say, well, we'll assign one to you, we were fine with where we were, and it turned out to be just great. Really fantastic. And our room steward, Hamilton, he did make us 2 really cute towel animals. Thank you again. Did a rabbit and an elephant. And was there for everything that we needed. You have to ask the steward for ice now. He was fantastic about grabbing that quickly. He very prompt, great service, very friendly. All right. One thing I want to talk about, if you are cruising into or out of Seward, is I'm going to recommend trying out the Alaska Railroad. So if you're coming into Anchorage or even Fairbanks, you can take the Alaska Railroad down to Seward or back to Anchorage or Fairbanks from the ship. It is fantastic, right? It runs a couple of times a day. Obviously, make your reservations way in advance. And you can travel in either in the main cars, or you can get something called Gold Star service, which they'll put you in one of the taller glass ceiling cars, which have fantastic views, plus an opportunity to go outside and or go outdoors and take photos and video from there. So hopefully I'll include some of that here. We took the Alaska Railroad from Anchorage to Seward. It's about a 4.5-hour ride. It leaves about 6:30 in the morning, gets in about 11:15. And the time of year that we went, all of the mountains were snow covered. So again, if you go and see Alaska in May, there is going to be a lot of snow. If you go in June or July, a lot of that may be melted. You may get to see more waterfalls, more floating ice. But we got to see a real winter wonderland, and it was really nice. It goes up, the train goes up into the mountains, it goes through tunnels, it goes over gorges. You get to see a lot of frozen lakes. We saw bald eagles. We saw white mountain goats. We had really great service. They gave us free drinks. Found out about something called a brown bear with hot chocolate and Bailey's Irish cream. Very good. And we also had free breakfast. We have a separate car for that. If you're traveling just with the main class, there is a dining car that you can go and get reserve time in. And there's also opportunities to purchase drinks. But I can't recommend that enough. Fantastic time on the rail. For a lot of the trip, it parallels the drive. So if you are taking the bus, you will see a lot of the same terrain, a lot of the same scenery, but there are opportunities where the train just goes where the cars cannot. So I want to talk about the shore excursions and in general in the ports that we visited, right? So coming from Seward, we visited Juneau first. Juneau is obviously the capital of Alaska with about 30,000 people. Fairly good-sized city. And we got a port talk ahead of time from the shopping consultant, Stephanie, on board Radiance of the Seas. And she really focused on Juneau, Skagway, and Ketchikan. And we found out for obvious reasons later on, that's where all the commercial shopping is, right? That's where the jewelry stores that sell the tanzanite jewelry are, and that's where the perfume shops are. That's where the recognized souvenir shops are, and so forth. Folks in Juneau said, hey, it's not unusual for any particular day to get 15,000 guests coming off the cruise ships to go into our little shops and restaurants and so forth. So if you are looking for smaller crowds and less craziness, I would suggest going in May or September on your cruise. But be aware, obviously, it's going to be colder in those months. It's 2 weeks after the cruise, and Anchorage is 70 degrees this weekend. It was 45 when we were there. So it is a big upswing in May and down in September. Another thing to keep in mind in September was the captain mentioned to us that it's sometimes possible to see the northern lights in September during some of the later cruises in the year. So if you're willing to brave the cold, that is a spectacular shot. That's something my husband has on his bucket list. Juneau is home to Mendenhall Glacier. So if you're going to see one thing in Juneau, I would recommend going to Mendenhall. We took a canoe trip. This is a 20-person canoe. So it's a group effort, and there are a number of relaxation breaks. We rode a little over 1.5 miles each way to go see the Mendenhall Glacier, and we got extremely close to it. We had to stop a little bit short of where the 1- and 2-person kayaks could go. They also took us to Nugget Falls and got a chance to get out of the boat. We had all been issued these big rubber boots to wear so you could wade around in the water a little bit. And I actually got really close to the falls by wading through water that was about a little higher than my shins to get really close for a couple of really good shots of the waterfalls. We have a couple of little traveling gnomes that go on vacation with us, and we take pictures of them in all sorts of interesting circumstances, and my husband invents a whole plot for them for their trip. If you liked Hubbard Glacier, seeing it from a distance, Mendenhall is very impressive, very imposing, and it's also receding. So in the last 40 years, Mendenhall has receded several miles. In fact, they've already come up with plans for a new ranger station, because by 2030 or 2040, they were saying you won't even be able to see the glacier from where they're currently located. So see it now. Very impressive. Very, very cool. Another thing that Juneau has is a tramway that will take you up to the top of one of the mountains closest to where the cruise ship dock is. You get some really nice views, and there are some trails and so forth if you're going to hike from there. I would say if you're going, you just want to go up and see the top of the mountain and come back, you should really think about spending the money, because it was $45 a person. It was $90 for 2 people to take the tram up. And in the end, we spent less than an hour at the top, and that was including visiting the gift shop and checking out the bar and so forth. A lot of snow up there at the top, and a lot of the trails were obfuscated with snow and covered up and so forth. So be aware. They list that as one of the shore excursions and so forth. If you're going to do that, plan on doing the hiking to make it worthwhile. You know, the shops are about what you'd expect. You want to go around and look through a lot of the shops before purchasing things that look like, you know, local souvenirs and so forth. You might think you're getting something unique, and then you find the exact same thing in the next shop, $2 cheaper, $2 more expensive. Whether it's jewelry or whatever. I did purchase these earrings in Juneau. You can't tell the color really well from here, but they're kind of a multicolor purple mix. Really pretty, locally made. And I wore them at dinner that night and got some nice compliments and so forth. So another thing, we got off the boat in Juneau and immediately we saw otter float by. Second stop was in Skagway. And Skagway, very much like Juneau, the shopping area is within walking distance from the ship. In Juneau, they had a free shuttle that would take you to and from the shopping area from the ship. It was about 1/2 mile to 3/4 of a mile. You get a little bit fooled when you can see the cruise ship in the distance, and you're like, I can walk that. It's not far at all. Okay, in Skagway, I'm going to recommend the railroad. Again, I love trains, but this one is also worth the expenditure. The Yukon, the White Pass Railroad, fantastic. our tour guide, who also was named Nugget to match the falls, was playing the role of like an 1890s prospector. So he got on the train car with us and played that role throughout the trip. He was fantastic. He was really good. So we took the train and it went up into the mountains, and actually went very briefly into Canada, into the Yukon, and or British Columbia, and we could not go very far. Typically, this train ride goes a lot farther into Canada, and there's an option to get off the train and go do a suspension bridge and so forth. So really cool sounding stuff. COVID happened, that excursion went away, and now the train turns around right after you get into Canada. But again, you get to see the routes that the original gold rush prospectors took in the 1880s, 1890s in Alaska, and just the hell they must have gone through to try to be able to pan for gold up in these mountains. There's a bridge there, an old train bridge that has collapsed, and we rolled right by it, and for a moment they made it sound like we were going to try to jump it, but we went right by it. A couple of tunnels that you go through, and you have to wonder how they even built this thing, because there are times where you just look over your shoulder and there's nothing there. It's just a sheer drop, and they must have blasted the heck out of these mountains. There must have been lots of deaths from avalanches and cave-ins and so forth trying to build this. Just a marvel of engineering and human, desire and ingenuity. Anyway, the train trip was fantastic. They gave us some snacks and so forth on the way. And when we got back, they took us to pan for gold. So you can go and see some of the old dredging equipment that was used back in the day to sort the gold nuggets from the junk and the silt and so forth. After that, it started raining. It was one of the few spots where we needed raincoats. And I'm going to recommend, if you go to Alaska and do a cruise tour, you should consider either bring a poncho with you. Those are kind of one-time use things. Get a raincoat that will fit over your jacket. So North Face makes some really good ones. They're a little bit expensive. I actually found a really nice one in Ketchikan in one of the gift shops for $16.99 and fit over my coat perfectly. Unfortunately, it was the last stop on the trip, so I have it for next time. Boots. Don't wear suede. Wear something leather. Wear something that's going to be watertight. If you're going to Alaska in April, May, or September, wear 2 layers of everything. I wore workout pants underneath my skinny jeans. That actually works every day, and it kept my legs a lot warmer. So back to Skagway. Skagway is also home to the same excursion that we took. Gave us an opportunity to meet an Iditarod racer, and she came and talked to us about what it's like to be part of the Iditarod. It takes, the last time she raced it, it took her about 20 days to finish, but it used to take about 30 or more. And she talked about the care and feeding of her sled dogs and all the clothes that they wore. I was amazed how much clothes they wear during the trip to keep them warm and cover them with blankets at night and so forth. And then we actually got to go meet the sled dogs and some of the puppies. They brought out 5 little 11-week-old puppies for us to meet. I got a couple of nice pictures, both of us holding the puppies. We had a chance to do a little bit of shopping in Skagway. All the bigger cities, they give you an option. We'll take you either back to the cruise ship or we'll drop you off in the middle of the city here. So we did that with Juno and Skagway. We let them drop us off in town. If you want to take the bus back to the cruise ships in Skagway, that is a $2 fee. The next day of the trip, we actually had 2 stops, which is something that I've never experienced before. And I had a chance to talk to the captain about it and said, hey, this must have been really trying on you guys. What were some of the challenges that you faced in having to dock the ship twice in one day? And basically it was just, hey, we had to work double shifts and more guys, and the next morning we had another stop. So it is what it is. but they were ready for it. They met it head on, and it actually worked out really well. We stopped at Icy Point in the morning, which is also the Native American village of Hoona. And so it's a lot different from Ketchikan, Juno, and Skagway. And so it didn't show up, they didn't mention it at all in the shopping guide that we got in the Aurora auditorium on the ship. So you get to Icy Point and you find that it's, an entirely run by the Native Americans, that there's one major building, a bunch of little buildings, a couple of different restaurants. We also rode the free tram. They have a sky tram there that is identical, if you've been to Walt Disney World, to the one that connects the Disney hotels to Epcot and the Disney Studios theme parks. Totally free. We rode that to the top of the hill, took some great photos back to the other side of the island where we found a Viking cruise ship moored up. We took a shore excursion to go see whales and brown bears. We went out on a boat and we saw quite a few humpbacks, and we were able to get close enough to get some decent pictures. We did see a couple of sea lions. We saw some really large birds. We saw a couple of bald eagles. In Juno, I got a really nice video of a bald eagle in flight from the top of the tramway that I said you shouldn't pay the money to see. At Icy Point, we got off the boat and got into a tour bus to go and see bears. When the salmon run, the bears are there. And the salmon don't really start running until the end of June, early July. So if you're hoping to see bears, I recommend you go to Alaska when you know the salmon are going to be running. The tour bus was great. The guide was great. She told us some fantastic stories of the Native Americans and some of their legends and so forth. It was really good. So we got to the place to go see bears. We went to a bunch of different platforms. We get to the viewing spots and some really nice views. We just didn't see anything bigger than a bird. And unfortunately, the salmon weren't running yet. And that was when they chose to tell us, hey, when the salmon are running next month, the bear will come down here right to the shoreline and they'll, put their paw in and grab a fish. And thinking, oh, this would have been, helpful information to know ahead of time before choosing this particular tour. From Icy Point, we also saw a couple of otters. There's a little beach area there. You can go and pretend you're basking on a beach in 40-degree weather. We got back on the ship in Icy Point, went and had an early dinner, and got ourselves ready to get back off the ship again. The ship left Icy at 4:30 in the evening, and at 7:30 it was back in port again in the little town of Haynes. We stayed in Haynes from 7:30 to 11 o'clock at night. I think the time that we had in Haynes actually was perfect for what we were able to do. We didn't choose a shore excursion. There were a couple of shore excursions available, but almost half the people on the boat got off for Haynes. And what we found was a beautiful little town that is not commercialized like Juno or Ketchikan or Skagway. All the shops sell locally made artwork, locally made crafts and designs, toys. And we had a chance to hop on a free little shuttle bus. Took us into the town area. There's a museum there you can go visit. We went in the gift area, the museum and so forth, and saw a little bit. But then we decided to go walk around, see the shops and so forth. We saw a fantastic shop where I ended up purchasing this cool little octopus, stuffed octopus that was handmade and hand sewn, and took it with me. And I got some great pictures. I'll post some here for the rest of the trip. My husband used it in his little storyline with our travel gnomes. Kind of cool to getting something that there's apparently only one like it in the world, and it's still sitting on the shelf in Haynes, so it's still there for the taking. We went to a couple of shops, looked at some fantastic artwork, just stuff that we knew was made right there or nearby by local artisans, that the money was staying in Haynes and there weren't kickbacks to the cruise ship and so forth. We actually bought a really nice piece of orca art there. that I'm in love with, my husband's in love with. It's just carved and painted beautifully. In addition, we actually went and visited something that's been on my bucket list forever. That was the International Hammer Museum. The largest hammer museum in the world is in Haynes, Alaska. 2,000 hammers on display. And you know what? The $7 goes to the local economy and the owners and so forth. So it was great. They were more than happy to talk about all the different hammers throughout history they've collected. They have 8,000 more hammers in storage there. Just a cute little, fun way to spend 45 minutes. So our last stop was in Ketchikan, and we found that in Ketchikan we could walk pretty much anywhere. We did a shore excursion that was fairly short, but it's something that we really were looking forward to doing, and that was learning more about totem poles and the Tlingit people that carve the totem poles of Ketchikan. And they're all over the place. They're all over town. They all have meaning. And just one thing that I learned that I thought was really interesting was that the bottommost carving on the totem pole is the most important. So it's strange that we have a saying that you must be the low man on the totem pole, because the low man is actually the most important. So they took us to see some of their totem poles. They talked about the history behind them and why they used particular ones. They took us to an area where they had a totem pole of Abraham Lincoln and another one of William Seward, who is not a well-liked man in the Tlingit village. And so that he sits on the totem pole in a position of shame. So just a fun trip. We had a chance to walk around, see quite a few totem poles, learn about the history behind them. And we also got to visit a couple of the artisans that are still making them. So we got to see the workshop and talk to the 3 guys that were working on a totem pole at the time. My gosh, they're the size of telephone poles. They're very impressive. They're thicker than a telephone pole. And if you make a mistake, there's no going back, right? They do some custom designs for local businesses and so forth, but they do a lot for the village as well. And it can be very expensive. They charge by the foot, right? And so we got to ask a lot of questions to the designers and so forth. And there was a master builder there who was, and I forgive me, I don't know the right term, but he had been doing this for, I believe, 40 years, was retired military veteran. So really a good excursion, and a cheap, inexpensive one as well. I think it was about $40 or $50 a person, including the bus ride and the tour and so forth. And we had a lot of time afterwards to go explore Ketchikan. So we walked around the city quite a bit. We actually found a really nice restaurant for both king salmon and king crab. We went to Annabelle's and watched some baseball or something. Well, we ate, oh my gosh, just some fantastic crab legs. If you're expecting to pay less for king crab because you're in the middle of Alaska and they fish it there, and there was another shore excursion that actually had crab pots and showed people how to get, how they catch the crab, you'd be mistaken, right? In fact, if you don't see live crab at the restaurant that you're visiting, it's possible that crab that you're eating, even in the middle of Alaska, has been frozen ahead of time. My husband tried the salmon, and maybe a little disappointed by the salmon in that it tastes like other salmon, but it was Pacific caught Alaskan king salmon. The last day we had a day at sea. I mentioned, in the future they're hoping to do things like the behind the scenes kitchen tours, ship tours, and so forth. I know a lot of people look forward to doing that. So I expect Radiance of the Seas will have those available. So, don't judge by my review at the tail end of the COVID epidemic in the cold month of May with 60% passengers and underrepresented crew as well. So the last thing I'll talk about is embarkation and disembarkation, right? If you do everything right ahead of time, embarkation should be a breeze, right? But with things like the regulations to go into Canada and also COVID regulations for testing and vaccination, you want to make sure that you're prepared ahead of time, and you'll be issued your sail and sign card when you get on the ship. Use that throughout the cruise. It's like a credit card. It can be used, I didn't have to bring anything with me except when I went on shore excursions other than the sail and sign card. So, which is really good if you're wearing a dress and you don't have any place to put anything. So sail and sign card right in there. The last day of the cruise, we had breakfast up in Windjammer, and they worked to get everybody off the ship by about no later than 9:30. It really depends on negotiating with the port and so forth, but we were able to get off the ship at about 9 o'clock, which is about 20 minutes later than our official debarkation time. And the reason for that was we had a excursion in Vancouver. So if you are departing later in the day, or you've never been to Vancouver before, gosh, it's a beautiful city. I recommend taking an excursion there if you can. There are a couple of really nice ones. There's one that's 6 hours long that Radiance offers that actually takes you up into the mountains. You see a big waterfall. You can walk across a suspension bridge. Your flight had to leave at 5 o'clock or earlier. Our flight left at 5:05, and they would not let us get on that excursion, which was really frustrating because our flight got canceled later in the morning, and we could have gone and done that. But we did choose an excursion, which was 3 hours on a bus tour of Vancouver. We got to get off the bus in Stanley Park and see more totem poles, check out the gift shops there, take some really nice photos of the skyline, and the skyline in the distance as well from some of the neighboring cities. I didn't realize Vancouver's not the only city there with skyscrapers and so forth. Just a really pretty area. They also stopped us in the middle of the city to get out for 10 minutes to go look at a steam-powered clock. Beautiful. I'm always a big fan of engineering feats, and this is really kind of cool. It shows you exactly how it works. And overall, fantastic trip. We had a great time. Radiance of the Seas is not, the top of the line, brand new Royal Caribbean ship. It's 20 years old, shows its age at times, but apart from that, it had everything that you need for an Alaska cruise. So an Alaska cruise, you don't want the sea days. You want to be able to go out on see the ports of call every day. And so, what Radiance offered us each day was just enough. It was worked out perfectly for us. All in all, it was a good choice for us. Fantastic time to go. Again, if you want to be warm, go in June or July or August. You will see much larger crowds. If you want to come in at the beginning of the tourist season and still see a lot of snow, come in May. It was easy getting around everywhere. No problems with anything. If you're hoping to see the Northern Lights, a cruise probably isn't going to work for you unless you go at the tail end of September, and you may catch them depending on atmospheric conditions and so forth. But Radiance of the Seas, thank you. We had a great time. If the opportunity comes again, we'd like to see Alaska again. If you're still cruising out there, we'll certainly give you another look. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like and I guess subscribe. Thanks very much.